Hello and welcome. For those of you who are new to the channel or just don't have the time to watch over 10 hours of Dungeons & Dragons content, good news! I'm about to recap the entire events of our Realm Apart campaign in hopefully less than 10 minutes. Before we begin, what is a Realm Apart? Well, it's a custom D&D campaign that I run on Twitch and also put the VODs up here on YouTube, where three hapless heroes kind of stumble their way into a potentially world-ending event. The three adventurers are Crispin Fisher, a half-elf sorcerer. Raised in a small fishing village on the southern coast of the Tantrian marshes, after years of hiding her elven ancestry, unfortunate events expose her lineage to the xenophobic neighbours, forcing her to flee the town and head to Coastburn on the continent of Etenia. Kaeda Itakura, a Kitsune druid who was discovered as a child in a farming town in Naryn. As the only Kitsune in town, and possibly the world, Kaeda has always wanted to know more about her real family. The desire for knowledge is what led her to Coastburn, where she heard rumour that their library had historical tomes in the various races of Coruscant. Varys Amastasia, a Navarial monk with a strong sense of honour and justice. Growing up in southern Naryn with the only remaining Avarials in Coruscant, Varys left on a pilgrimage of sorts, believing it's the duty of all Avarials to help those in need. Varys headed out into the world to lend a helping hand where he could, and Coastburn was the first stop on his journey. The story begins as Kaeda and Varys, fresh off their boat journey from Naryn, arrive in the coastal town of Coastburn. A series of brutal murders have recently been committed, and the town guard has placed the entire town on lockdown while they investigate. Noticing that Kaeda and Varys aren't just typical tourists or farmhands, the captain of the guard, Alden Tanner, asks if they could assist the thinly stretched town guard to investigate. Overhearing this, Crispin, who has been living in Coastburn for roughly a year at this point, asks if she can join the investigation, as she suspects her friend might be a victim of the murders. It doesn't take long for our adventurers to discover that the victims were all avid supporters of Coastburn's mayor, and they were killed in a plot to overthrow Coastburn's local government. The plot puts them on the trail of a local by the name of Heston Constantine, although he manages to slip through their fingers before the grip can tighten. 2 weeks after the events of Chapter 1, our adventurers have all settled in Coastburn, helping Tanner with the occasional problem that arises. One such problem is the appearance of a winged ape on the borders of town. The party is sent out to track the creature and determine if it's a threat or not, which leads them to a small village filled with mute inhabitants. After spending much longer than expected trying to unlock a church door, the party eventually tried to communicate with the mute villagers, only to learn that the entire village and its inhabitants are actually a peaceful mimic colony, and they have trapped the violent winged ape in a cave below the church. Armed with this knowledge, the gang descend into the cave on the hunt for their deadly foe, but quickly learn that things aren't what they seem. The winged ape can speak common, and after giving his name, Nace Taj, he explains that he's from a peaceful tribe called Kalpseta in the northwest mountains. He was simply foraging for supplies when the mimic captured him. The party leave the cave only to discover that the entire mimic colony has now fled, but at least they made a powerful ally with the winged apes. A few weeks later, we join the heroes as they plan to get rowdy at Coastburn's tavern, the Pike and Swordfish. But before their first drinks are even finished, trouble starts to brew. What begins with the panicked screaming of one of the patrons quickly escalates to townsfolk killing themselves in increasingly horrible ways, as a thick fog envelops the town. In this fog, our heroes encounter visions of their worst fears, all presented by a mysterious woman with a single dragon wing protruding from her back. In an effort to stop these visions, the party trace the origins of the fog to the buried ruin of an old mansion, containing multiple statues of a figure known only as Sazanta the Wingless. After finding a pile of loot and solving the mansion's puzzles, the party find themselves in a crypt, facing off against a wight, guarding a machine that seemed to be converting liquids into the fog outside. The plot thickens much like the fog as the party discover that the wight was Heston Constantine, killed and resurrected as a punishment for his previous failure. The party also discover that the fog was created using various creatures' bodily fluids, including blood from the mysterious Sazanta herself. 4 peaceful months after the events of Chapter 3, trouble begins to stir once more in the town of Coastburn. An uncrewed ship has crashed into the dock, and Alden Tanner has asked the group to accompany him in the search for the crew and origin of the ship. Heading out to sea in a caravel captained by one Lucien Dupois, the party find themselves bow to bow with an enormous living ship, cursed wrecks that are fused with the body and soul of their captain and hunt other ships that stray into their territory. After boarding the living ship, the party discover that this is somehow being controlled by a group of Chuuls, each bearing the marking of Sazanta. With no way to fight this many Chuuls head-on, the party sink the living ship and return to Lucien's vessel. A few short days after returning to land, our heroes are invited to attend the Festival of Games, an annual event whereby Coastburn and neighbouring town Claywell gather together for games, music and food. This year the event is taking place outside of Coastburn's town gates, and seems to be going well until 2 wounded Claywell guards emerge from a nearby woods, exclaiming that their town is under siege. Tanner rallies his guard for a counterattack, asking the party to scout ahead while he makes final preparations and reaches out to the other nearby towns and settlements for support. Upon arrival, the gang find out that Claywell has been completely overrun as they face off against skeletons, necromancers, and abominations made from Claywell's dead. They also discover that Varys' clan has been corrupted by Sazanta's poisoned words. She is now known as the One-Winged Queen and plans to kill all humans to better the lives of the other races in Coruscant. As the party press on through the ruined town, they catch a brief glimpse of Sazanta herself before they are hunted down by the commander of her skeleton army, Xarxus. After a long and grueling battle, our heroes are downed one by one, moments before the sound of Tanner's makeshift army can be heard on the horizon. After spending 3 weeks in a magically induced coma, the party wake up in the city of Vexham to the strange sight of Ghost 414. An ancient warforge built for infiltration and assassination. Ghost 414 tells the party that in the 3 weeks they've been unconscious, Sazanta's army has grown large enough to wipe out most of Eternia's northwestern coast. The army have yet to reach Vexham, although it is suspected that she has several key facilities in the city, and intel suggests that she plans to use Vexham as the staging area to march across the rest of Eternia. One of these facilities is a manor house owned by Renata Mayfort, a well-known figure around the city who has been recently spotted colluding with expert scholars in the occult and with historians who specialise in the myths of old gods, specifically stories about Acht, the old god of human trickery. While this wouldn't seem suspicious on its own, Renata has also been in receipt of several large shipments guarded by non-human mercenaries, and building work in her property has been disrupting her neighbours. With this knowledge in hand, our heroes head off under the cover of darkness to investigate. After some very questionable stealth tactics, the gang find themselves in a basement of Mayfort Manor, face to face with a juvenile green dragon skeleton, a mountain of expositional documents, and the skull of Acht himself. With that in mind, they decide to grab everything they can, including the 8-foot-high god skull, and cheese it down the street. And there you have it, a brief recap of A Realm Apart. If you would like to know more of the details, you can watch all 6 episodes either on YouTube or on Twitch as a VOD, and keep an eye out for episode 7, which will be coming soon. If you'd like to watch live, please follow me on twitch.tv/pixelboy, or for the VOD, you can catch it here or on Twitch. Thank you for watching, hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.